things. The point, though, is even for those of us who are, for instance, very concerned about nutrition, we know there are things that can trigger bad reactions in the body. There's a fabulous, incredible woman who does organic farming in this community who came down with cancer. Now, she has incredible nutrition. There are toxins in the environment. There are toxins in the air. You know, that's what we're dealing with the microchips. It's not you microchip an animal, it will get cancer, and that's why it got cancer. It's a trigger. Well, it can still be something. It may not be the sole cause. It depends how you mean causal. I agree with you. It's not the sole cause. But for instance, when you look at the microchip studies, where you had much broader numbers and you started seeing statistically significant results.
They didn't do a chi-square test looking at the normal rate of cancer with rats or mice without microchips, comparing those with ones that were implanted. They just implanted all the mice, separated them into groups, gave some of them certain chemicals, and they just said X number got cancer. But they didn't.
You're not on the mic, so I'm going to sort of paraphrase, and I hope you'll accept my paraphrasing, which is they weren't doing a controlled study to look at microchips in cancer in mice because they weren't planting all of their mice. So you're right, it's not the perfect study you'd want to look at. That doesn't mean there's not a relationship.
All right, I just want to read a couple of quotes from these studies, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on them because this isn't really the sole purpose of this, but I think it's important that we clarify this particular issue. I'm reading for the Le Calvé study in 2006. This is when 1,260 mice were microchipped and 4.1% developed cancer. Most of the animals, this is a quote from the document from page 258 of that study, most of the animals with microchip-associated tumors died prematurely due to the size of the masses, or the deaths were spontaneous and attributed to the masses. One of the most serious or potentially serious disadvantages of the microchip implantation is the possibility that foreign body-induced tumors may develop. That's Le Calvé, 2006. I'll read you another one.
That's just for the radio, Catherine. It's not going to amplify. No.
Here, I'll play my turn. I'll get those. I can face it.
Thank you.
Electronic microchip technology as a means of animal identification may affect animal morbidity and mortality, in other words, illness and death rates, due to the large size and rapid growth of microchip-induced tumors, as well as the occurrence of metastases. That's Elcock 2001, in which 1,040 rats were microchipped and 0.8% or close to 1% developed a microchip cancer. They go on to write, most tumors arising from foreign bodies are malignant and have a rapid growth rate, killing the animal in a matter of weeks. Read another one. Blanchard et al. 1999, in which 177 genetically modified mice were implanted with microchips, and 10.2% of them developed cancer. Here they write, quote, there was an unequivocal or unmistakable association between the microchip implant transponder and sarcoma. Another one, the presence of the foreign body microchip transponder may elicit tissue reactions capable of generating genotoxic byproducts. Now, this is a particularly interesting study because it's one that the industry has tried to use to discredit the cancer connection. Let me tell you why. This study involved a special type of mouse. It is the genetically modified P53 plus or minus mouse. Now, that sounds all really technical, but there's something important about this. When researchers are trying to test whether something is genotoxic, in other words, whether it is a genetic toxin and actually causes things like cancer, they don't want to have to implant thousands of mice in order to see that maybe 1 out of 1,000 gets has this response to test whether something's a genotoxin. So what they've done is they've developed a special type of mouse that only develops cancer in the presence of genotoxins. Without genotoxins, they don't get cancer. And what they found was when they put these microchips into those mice, rather than 1 and 2% getting cancer, 10% developed cancer, which is very clear evidence that these microchips are genotoxic. That's why they use those mice. Had they not been genotoxic, they would not have developed the cancer. So there's a very serious issue there. Now, I'll tell you why they believe this is happening. When you implant a foreign body into living tissue, it creates an irritation reaction around it. There are actual cellular changes around it as the body tries to adapt to this thing in there. There's actually like a little shell that forms around the microchip, and that is where all of these cancers originated, is in those cells. They are irregular cells, and in some cases they go in little nuts and they turn into a cancerous tumor. Let me read just one more. It's the one with the word cause in here. Let me see if I can find that one. All right, this is Tillman et al. 1997, in which 4,279 mice were implanted with a microchip, and of those, 0.8% or close to 1% developed cancer. Here's the quote from page 200 of that study. The neoplasms, in other words, the cancers, induced in the present investigation are clearly due to the implanted microchips. Then they go on. Further information on tumors induced by microchips, et cetera, et cetera. There's one more. There's a cause. Here's another one. Investigators using implanted devices need to be aware of foreign body cancer development, tumorigenesis, when evaluating the results of long-term studies using mice. 2,000 mice in this study by Keith Johnson, and 1% developed cancer there. This goes on and on. So this is what these studies said. They literally come out and say these chips cause cancer. Right? I hope I cleared that up.
All backslash to teach research and methodology, and I was only interested in it. When I first thought, I freaked out and said,
anyway.
Moving on. Okay, further questions?
It's mandatory. I just want to say it's.
we're glad you asked the question.
Hello?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm worried about the health of your animals. I just want to say, not felt, which is BS.
Thank you very much.
To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody who's been implanted with a Verichip implant without their knowledge. There are a couple thousand people around the country, or excuse me, around the world who have been implanted with these with consent, or at least some degree of consent. You may know that a couple years ago we turned out to the Alzheimer's Community Care Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, to protest the implantation of Alzheimer's patients whose very disease meant that they did not give consent because they weren't in a position to give consent. Because of that, we have a piece of legislation that we're trying to get introduced here in Texas called the Bodily Integrity Act. It's up on our website at antichips.com. You click on legislation. And we met this morning, actually, with Lisa Wilson and I went in and met with Representative Patrick Rose, who spoke very highly of you, by the way, Judith. And we did get them a copy of the legislation, and they said that if not in this legislative session, that they will try to introduce it in the next. Yeah.
Dr. Albrecht, is there any use of micro RFID tags? You want to get on my Is there any use of RFID tags that you feel that would be useful and productive for our society?
Well, I would be the first to acknowledge that it's more convenient to breeze through the check stand by just pressing your hand to a reader device. It would certainly be more convenient to have all of your taxes paid by the mile. It would certainly be more convenient to be able to track and locate everything on the globe, but at what cost? You know, that it's the same thing I used to say about the frequent shopper card at the grocery store. You know, they raise the prices and artificially lower them back down if you let them record all your purchases. Sure, I'd like to save 15 cents on a package of rice, but at what cost? So when you look at the potential upsides of this technology, more convenient, faster, easier, you know, the list goes on, maybe safer. When you look at that potential list of upsides and then you contrast it with the potential list of downsides, I think that the equation becomes really clear that the downsides really enormously outweigh any possible benefits. And as I've said in the past, I don't want to save 15 cents on a packet of rice and lose my freedom.
We have a question back here.
Hi, Catherine. This is directed to Catherine.
Speaking back right here.
Okay. I'm Tim with Austin Energy. Thanks once again for helping me shut down the thumb scanning over at Austin Energy.
Oh.
And unfortunately, it is back up again.
You shut down the thumb scanning at Austin Energy.
And with Catherine's help, with a lot of angry city employees, we...
I'm sorry, can we get him on the mic?
It's like, it feeds back.
He's too close to which?
This with the speaker over here, I think.
Yeah, we got feedback. I'll yell. I'm pretty loud mouth anyway. But on the smart grid stuff, they've been blowing out a bunch of stuff on the smart grid. They're really selling it real hard here. And I've got everybody motivated to go up against the thumb scanners again, but I need some ammo for going up against this smart grid. Is there any resources we can look at?
You guys are right in their sights. I'll tell you, Austin is